The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the man that's stuck in the Frankenwarp! Dun 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 dun! This is week 2, baby. We're moving up in the timeline. We've jumped from 1970 to 1980, so here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, so this one... 70, it was made in the 50s, obviously, as we talked about, and so but this one definitely feels like the 80s more than 70 felt like the 70s.
Right, yeah. This one was made in, 72?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you told me it was made in the 80s, I'd believe you.
Yeah, it's at least a little closer.
Right. But it's Italian. This is an Italian flick.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely, it's Giallo adjacent.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It smacks of Giallo.
Yeah. It doesn't have all of the sort of specific elements that you think of when you think of a Giallo, but it definitely has the right vibe, at least.
Yeah, it definitely starts off like a Giallo. So, well, first off, warning, it is an Italian Giallo, so there's going to be some essay in here. If you don't like that, there's parts you can skip. You'll know.
Yeah. So we start off with a really intriguing thing that then doesn't really pan out to anything. We get the scene of a man driving a car, and he has one hand, and
right.
They really focus in on the fact that he's got it's not like a fake cartoonish, he has a stump. They've got an actual amputee, and he's driving with one hand and messing with the radio with his amputated and it's interesting, and it's I'm intrigued to see where this is going to go with this character.
Wait, let's double check. So that actor, the actor that plays that person, they're literally an amputee on that one hand.
I think so. I mean, it seemed like it. I was about to
say, because I could have swore I saw something moving under the skin that looked like fingers, but you know what? Maybe they're just that good. Maybe they're just that good with their hand.
It could be. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's... Yeah, I mean, it at least looked better than what you usually see, where it's just, meaty chunk,
right.
And it's usually noticeabbut longer than it should be, but here it at least looked real to me.
So if it's makeup, it's good makeup.
Yeah. But then we just he hears on the radio that there's a scientist developing new transplant techniques. And so again, I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. We've got this amputee, we got transplants.
Yeah, he's going to get his hand fixed, right? And it's going to turn evil. That's how it's going to go.
But then so we cut away from him, and then we get the most Giallo bit of the movie. There's just a woman in a dark alley. There's a shadowy figure kind of following her.
Okay, I know what you did last summer, because it's the leather trench coat, but also I guess it's just a fedora, but it really looks like a fisherman's hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he kills her, and then while she's laying there, rips open her shirt, and then ends up like cutting her side open and removing an organ.
Presumably liver. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, it looked very liver-like.
Yeah. By the way, he has like a pocket scalpel. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it is. So now you know.
And then we get to the credits, which are pretty cool because it's just like a shot of the man, the killer, from like the knees down. But you just see blood dripping next to him, where like he's still just holding this liver through the whole credits.
Right.
And then pretty much when the credits end, we like cut to later on another woman finding this dead body on the street
and just screaming. That's basically, hey, pay attention, it's done.
Yeah, we get a lot of like whip zooms as she's screaming, like zooming in on her and zooming in on the body. And, it gets real exaggerated for a minute. And then we cut back to our one-handed man, who is now laying unconscious by the side of the road. He has wrecked his car.
Yeah, which, you kind of would have liked to have a reference to that, other than just, oh, this presumably, like, important character just died.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, we thought we were going to see more of this person, but no, we know they're dead because they're surrounded by a bunch of people, presumably men, in white, like, lab jackets.
Yeah, they say like we need to take him to Dr. Schwartz right away, which is the doctor mentioned earlier on the radio, who's testing new transplant techniques.
Yeah, and of course they put him into their Ecto 1. That was amazing.
So then we cut back to. So there's a lot of like cross-cutting here where we're sort of in parallel stories. So we go back to the woman who was murdered, and now we've got a bunch of police. They're investigating the scene, and they find that scalpel that you mentioned. Then it's like covered in blood.
Yeah, it's found by, I believe, what is it, Inspector Schneider?
Yeah, I think so. And then we cut back again to the paramedics who have arrived at Dr. Schwartz's facility, and then we kind of like cut upstairs in the building. There's another couple. I thought they were a married couple at first, but then you'll find out they're brother and sister actually. And the woman's in bed and has some sort of terminal illness. Yeah. And her brother's like, the doctor has this new serum. It might fix everything for you, and she feels very encouraged about her possibilities for extending her life.
Right. And I believe they have a conversation about her maybe having a genetic disease. But we do find out here in a moment that Dr. Schwartz, he does have this really, really special thing that helps people out. It's this blue curacao, Schwartz serum.
Yeah. And we also find out that the brother is like a reporter. He just got a job as a crime reporter.
Carl Schein. By the way, there's a lot of German names for this Italian film.
Right. And then by that time the doctors come in and they're like, okay, we've got a donor. It's our man with one hand. So this is the last we're going to see of that. But they need to perform the surgery right away while everything's fresh. And Dr. Schwartz even talks to Carl and is like, her body could reject the heart, but I've got this. The serum. He says that it's anti-lymphocytic. And he's like, but it's experimental, so you need to sign paperwork. And the brother's like, of course, if she needs the procedure, let's do it. Let's try this, see if it helps.
Yeah. We then get a shot after we actually see the serum that someone breaks into the hospital, and they just lift it. They just lift that brand new serum.
And they're wearing some black leather gloves. So again, here's some Giallo stuff because you got to have those black leather gloves. Yep. Yeah, and they take the serum and get out, and then we cut away to the doctors. They're prepping for surgery, and then again cut down to like a morgue, and there's like a man in a blood-stained apron removing the liver from the dead one-handed man. Right. Yeah. He's already cut open where they've removed his heart, and now this guy's coming in to steal a liver as well.
Do we reveal the name of this guy, or do we hold on to that for a moment?
Obviously
he's
the title of
he's Otto Frankenstein.
Yeah,
played by Gordon Mitchell.
He also he takes the liver, and then the next part really, like, I thought he said now the gullet, but like I even rewound it, but like apparently he says gonad.
Yep.
Because he in addition to the liver, he removes one testicle from this corpse.
Testicle.
Yep, drops a little, looks like a hard-boiled egg in a jar of water.
That's why they're called huevos, baby.
And then, he sews up the corpse to hide, what he's done, takes the 2 jars, and then we find out that inside this facility, he has a secret lab hidden behind a bookcase.
Yeah, that's amazing, by the way. Literally just a bookcase full of medical, journals, presumably, and you just pull one and it opens up. It's like, I feel like somebody would notice that,
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah. Do you think, the manager of the hospital would be like, hey, wasn't there another lab behind this one? Why is there a bookcase here now? Huh, that's weird. No.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like this facility belongs to Schwartz, or he's like the head of the facility, but he seems to have no idea that this is here.
Right.
But yeah, so he goes back into his secret lab. He puts the organs in a fridge that also contains the serum. Like, we never saw the thief of the serum, but it was pretty obvious that's what was going on. Mm-hmm. Then we cut back to Dr. Schwartz telling Carl, the serum was stolen and your sister died.
Yep. Oh, you thought she was going to be here for a moment? Nope, she's gone. She's out.
Yeah, so characters just drop like flies in this, and always off screen. It almost feels like there may have been some rewrites where they were just like, oh, this actor quit and we've got to get rid of him or something,
or they found something better to do at the time.
Yeah, because it's strange to not have a scene of her surgery and not to have a scene of the one-handed man having a car wreck. Probably the car wreck is because they didn't want to pay to wreck a car.
Makes sense.
But either way, it is kind of glaring that we just lose these characters. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we found out that the brother's a crime reporter, so he's like, well, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to use my crime reporter powers to figure out who stole the serum. So
immediately we then cut to heavy breathing, and we get a bunch of brains and organs on a table. Apparently our creature here has he lost a fight on Mustafar, and now he has to breathe real heavy. Yeah, and so he ends up he's at a bakery or a butcher shop, and goes inside. It's strange, I mean, anybody can have any job, but this is not what you would expect a butcher to look like, especially in a movie. She's a very attractive butcher, yes.
Yeah, this is this very attractive blonde lady, very not a muscly person, very slim. And
good with a knife, what can you say?
Yeah. And so the creature goes inside and just kind of she's like, what can I get for you? And he just kind of grunts and points at
right. But it's he points in the opposite direction of where she needs to go.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, you want some liver? Sure, I'll get some. So she goes back in, doesn't get the liver from the display in the window, but goes, back behind the counter,
presumably to hack it off the cow.
Yeah. But he follows her back there and then attacks her.
Yeah, he does. And but he doesn't just normally attack her, because she does escape. He decides, I'm going to beat her with a bone, like a cow's leg.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
But once again, because this is an Italian film, he can't just kill her and take her liver. No, he has to strip her and grope her.
Mm-hmm. And it's so while he's beating her with the cow bone, her shirt just gets ripped off, just without any sort of he doesn't rip the shirt off of her. It just rips spontaneously. Mm-hmm. But then, yeah, like you said, of course, he has to grope her and everything. Yeah. And then we cut away to the police station, and we get a good, just classic police chief who's just pissed off about everything. Right. He's mad they spelled his name wrong on a police report, and then he gets an update on this murder that it was performed with surgical tools, but the cuts were amateurish, so it wasn't actually done by a surgeon.
And I believe he's even at one point he pulls out a cigarello or something, and he's like, man, I could really smoke this. and his blonde underling, the other detective, what's his name, Vincente?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he just whips out the Zippo and is like, here you go, boss. He's got like, you suck up.
And then he's like, no smoking. Nobody is smoking until we solve this case.
Right.
Which becomes like this, like the cops are really like the comic relief in this, and a big part of it is this whole joke about how they all really, really want to smoke, but they can't because they got to solve the case first.
Yeah. To be fair, they're also extremely incompetent. Well, more or less, right?
Yeah.
So.
And so we cut back to the secret lab where Frankenstein is preparing for surgery.
Yeah, he's got to bust out that Schwartz serum.
Yeah. And he's also got the good old like autopsy tape recorder system going, and so he's listening to his notes from his previous surgery to kind of get prepared.
Right. You know what? That's very... I get that, because there have been times when I'd be like, wait a second, what was I doing? Oh, I have notes for that.
Yeah.
It's like I'm doing a podcast from doing that.
Right. And so from the notes, we get a lot of like backstory filled in. We find out that the creature in this is named Mosaic, which is a great name. It's so good.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah. And so apparently he has replaced one testicle, which caused increased sexual potency, but the other testicle and the liver have been rejected by the body, so he needs to, replace them with new ones. So obviously that's where this, theft from the one-armed man came from.
The ball replacement.
Yeah. He also chastises Mosaic on the recording and like, you need to stop going out and killing and stealing organs yourself. I'll take care of the organ theft.
Right. I mean, listen, Mosaic's a go-getter,
He wants to have a say in what kind of organs he gets. I understand.
You gotta pick those things out. You can't just put them in all willy-nilly like.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, he gets interrupted as he gets some bright red lights flashing and the doorbell rings as Carl has arrived.
Yeah, and so this is the point where, like, I got really kind of confused about the layout of this because the doorbell ringing, it is at Frankenstein's house, right? Because, so is Frankenstein's house connected to the hospital and the secret lab, or is okay?
It seems that way. Because
I wasn't sure if he just had like some sort of buzzer run from a distance to his house so he would know when someone rang the bell, or if they were connected. It was, the logistics here get a little murky.
Yeah, because it seems like, so there's that little like kind of secret house where the lab is actually connected to. That's what Carl's ringing the doorbell on. And then Carl's like, well, I guess nobody's home. He walks just like 2 steps in another direction and rings the doorbell to actual Frankenstein's house, or Sonia.
Gotcha, okay.
Sonia's his daughter, right? Or is it?
She says she's his niece, and then later is like, he's not actually my uncle. He's like a family friend or something, but he made me who I am. Yeah, which made, like, for a second I was like, is she going to be a creation? But it doesn't seem like it. It seems like maybe she's just interested in what he does, so she's come to live with him.
Right. Either that or they ran out of the budget for that part of the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and immediately, like, it's pretty clear that she's going to be a romantic interest for Carl.
Yeah, because they immediately hook up, or not hook up, but they have bedroom eyes, like, immediately once the door opens.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and they're a little flirty.
But she's like, my uncle's not here right now. I'll take a message. And, he's like, okay, tell him that, Carl Shine came by, but I'll be back tomorrow.
Right. And he walks out into the woods and gets into his car. But as he does so, like, there's clearly she's a lady of the evening, prostitute, whatever you want to say, with short hair. She looked like she was going to be super important to the story. She kind of is, but not much. Like, I'm like, oh, she's going to be a leading lady or something, or she's going to, be the other love interest or something to that effect. No, she's literally just a prostitute, only in 3 scenes.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, minor characters in here that, like, feel like they're going to be something bigger and then just don't end up being.
Right, because she has a very distinct look for being, like not that much story being revolving around her.
Yeah, like, generally if you've got like this kind of character, if you've got like your like central casting sex worker stereotype, they're going to have a particular kind of look, and she doesn't really. Like, she's, like you said, she's got like short hair. She's kind of like a little more edgy than your normal. So it feels like we're setting her up to have like a personality outside of like the stereotype.
Right. She's like a punk rocker who's just doing this to make her way through college, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, she's apparently just a prostitute. And then Carl speeds off, and it's like, oh, he almost hit her.
Yeah, like she kind of propositions him, and he's not into it, so he just
like,
heads out.
Are you looking for a good time?
Yeah. And then we get like a kind of short montage of the police kind of investigating. They go to several places and ask about, but basically they're trying to track down where this particular scalpel was purchased. Right. And then, follow that back to, find out maybe who did this murder. Yeah,
and I think it's Strauss who we get a very nondiscreet Bank of Americard sign right in the window. It's like, did they pay for any of this movie? Probably, if it's that prominent. Okay.
Yeah. And then we also get we get our sex worker from earlier, and she's sort of like humming, accosted by Mosaic, and she's kind of disgusted and pushes him away. He's a Frankenstein monster. He's got all the stitches and scars and everything.
Yeah, and she just kind of like, nope, I'm good. He keeps walking.
Yeah, but then there's like another lady nearby who's more of the stereotype of what you'd expect, and she's like, she's down. She's like, let's go back to my room. Like any John's a good John. I'll take the money.
Pretty much.
And so they get back to her room, and she immediately gets completely undressed and gets into bed.
Butt naked. But also, this is weird. Maybe this is an America only phenomenon, but I feel like it's not. I feel like she should have a pimp if she doesn't, because like the fact that she brought a person into her home or wherever she was working, you feel like pimps aren't just there to slap quote unquote bitches and take their money. They're also there for protection.
Yeah, and clearly she could use some protection, as we will see. Like, I guess all she's got going for her is like the buddy system with the other girls, and that does pay off, but it's a little late for. It doesn't save her.
Either that or Italy's just way nicer about the whole thing than America is. You never know.
Yeah.
But yes, as you said, it kind of pays off, but not immediately, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But hey, they have a good time.
Yeah, she's like, why don't you get undressed? And he just kind of stands there and stares at her, and she's like, or she's like, do you have any money? Like, why are you here? What's going on?
And I love that he just pulls out the wallet, grabs some bills, and just chucks them at her. Like,
it's like a huge like wad of money, and she's like, all right, okay, we could do this. I'm down. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go into the bathroom and change if you're shy?
Yeah, and he does, and he comes out, and it's not what she's hoping for. Because she literally sees that he's a mosaic of a human being.
Yeah, I think the face scars are one thing, but like I think the full body. We only kind of see him from the back, but I would assume that it's supposed to be that the full body is more significantly, damaged in such a way that she can tell he's some kind of monster.
Yeah, I think eventually we do get a shot of it, like the side happy trail, and there's a big like incision going all the way down.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, of course, she screams in terror at this. Then, as you warned earlier, this results in a pretty unpleasant sexual assault scene.
He did not come here just to have like a talk. He came here for other reasons.
Yeah. Thankfully, the scene is fairly brief. And it cuts away to Dr. Frankenstein, and he's now talking to like the other girls that were there, including our sort of punk rock girl.
Mm-hmm. They went off in that direction pretty much.
Yeah. So, he goes trying to track down Mosaic. He rushes after him. And then so we cut back, and this is actually more difficult to see than the actual assault for me. Like,
she survived.
Yeah. So it's like she's laying there, and like just the look on her face, her eyes are just like wide with terror.
Yeah. She's like, thank God
Mosaic
this is over. I can escape.
Yeah, he's asleep, but like, he's like kind of got his arm over her or whatever. So she's like trying to, as cautiously as she can, like, creep out, get out from under his arm and get out of bed.
Well, he's a light sleeper.
Yeah, so he wakes up and strangles her.
Mm-hmm. But I maybe I missed it. Maybe it was his body rejecting the eye, or maybe she got a good hit in. But like halfway through, it's like her hand goes up, and then he just starts clutching his eye and bleeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if she clawed him or what, but yeah.
Right.
But yeah, and then around this time, Dr. Frankenstein breaks down the door.
Right.
But it's too late.
He's like, "Damn it, get covered, man."
Yeah, and he's like, as soon as I saw that you stole some money, I knew what you were doing. I knew you wanted a woman, but you have to stop this killing.
Yeah.
So they leave, and then we cut to the police again. They're now investigating this murder scene. It's a pretty just brief, crime scene investigation scene. We don't really get much. And then we cut to the station where the chief is getting a call about everything. And we find out that there are 2 different sets of fingerprints on the same hand.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and he's like, that's not possible. And then at that point, the 2 sort of like main cops that they mentioned earlier, they come in.
Yeah.
And they're like, the girls can't ID the killer, but they did say that there was a distinguished gentleman who was also looking for him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I believe some guy brings in a paper, and we do. If you manage to translate the German, there was apparently an accident in the subway where a lot of people were mangled, and another horrible murder in the city of Munich.
Yeah.
So, Also, there's a notice of the Munich city board electing a bunch of left-leaning members. Because why not? Sure. This was all translated. I do not speak German or know anything about German. This was all Google Translate, so it could be wrong. This scene again just kind of plays for comedy with the cops. Like there's a part where one of the cops is like, "What a load of crap!" Oh, excuse my language. But then we end up cutting away to Carl, who's now in his office. He's recording his thoughts about the whole situation, which is just another opportunity to kind of like, give you an info dump of information and kind of, in case you weren't paying attention, he just kind of tells you everything that's happened so far. And then a guy comes in with a telegram. So he starts like telling the guy with the telegram everything that he's got so far, just like bouncing his ideas off of him. Mm-hmm. And even says like, okay, so here's all I've got. Let's put it together like a mosaic. Dun, dun, dun.
Then we just cut to him bursting into the police station, wanting to talk to the chief. He's like, I've got information and I can help. So now our threads are starting to come together.
Right.
And while he's doing that, we get the 2 main cops in the hallway, and they're like, man, I hope he helps, because if we don't solve this, we're not going to get to smoke again.
Yeah, I know.
So one of the things that Carl has put together is at all of the crime scenes that he knows about, there has been like the smell of formaldehyde.
Right.
So he asks the cops about that, and they're like, yeah, the ones we've been at have had that too. So, okay, that ties them all together. But why would it smell like formaldehyde? What's the reason for that?
Maybe they're preserving bodies.
Yeah. So he's like, well, let's go. I'm going to go talk to Dr. Frankenstein again. The scientists, these are the people that might know something about that. Mm-hmm. But he gets there, and again,
Sonia.
Yep, it's just Sonia, and she's like, oh, he'll be back any time now.
Well, let's have a drink.
Yeah, so they end up just having a scene of them flirting together.
Yeah.
This is where she says, I'm not actually his niece. And, he used to be this, like, famous surgeon, but he moved to just become, like, an anatomy expert because there was a failed procedure. Somebody died. He was had to leave town in shame, and so he's kind of started again in this new town.
Yeah, makes sense. Then as Carl goes to leave, we then cut to Frankenstein and Schwartz having a little discussion. We're talking about the police investigation, I believe.
Yeah, Schwartz is like, so the police told me that the scalpel used in the murder was assigned to this hospital and specifically to you. You don't know anything about that, do you?
No.
And Frankenstein's like, no, it must have been stolen. I don't know what could be going on.
Right, and that's about the time we start hearing a bunch of crashing going on behind the wall.
And Dr. Schwartz is like, that's coming from behind the bookcase. What's going on? And Frankenstein's like, oh yeah, I got a private lab. And he was like, all right, let me see this private lab.
Right. It's like, in my hospital you have a private lab? All right, whatever.
Yeah, so they go inside, and of course, we got...
Schwartz didn't learn that you're supposed to be the last guy in the room of the place you don't really understand, because Frankenstein just grabs his scalpel, and it's like, oh, okay, this is how he goes.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yep, so Schwartz's throat is slit, and then...
but at least he sees Mosaic thrashing around first, you know?
So then... we find out that the reason Mosaic's like thrashing around is because he's in pain. His eyes have been rejected. So either the blood from earlier was from the rejection, or else she slashed at his eyes and it caused them to be rejected. But one way or the other, his eyes are messed up now. But coincidentally, we got a dead body right here, fresh.
Hey, Schwartz isn't using those eyes.
Yeah,
not anymore.
Yeah. So so he does that surgery real quick, and then we meet a new character just being suddenly introduced by the name of Fritz.
Yeah. Wonder what that reference to.
Yeah. In this case, he's like, I think the head nurse is what they end up saying.
Yeah,
something like that.
Like an orderly.
Yeah. And so Fritz comes in just to the non-secret lab and asks Frankenstein, like, have you seen Schwartz? He's been missing.
Right. And I believe Frankenstein's like, nope, haven't seen him. He's like,
nope.
That's weird, because doesn't he say he like just came? We know he came in or something like that.
Yeah, like he just told me he was going to come talk to you, and then no one's seen him since.
It's like Fritz knows exactly what happened.
Yeah. And so then we cut to Frankenstein talking to Mosaic, and he's like, all right, that Fritz has got to go. He's getting too nosy. So you got to take care of that. Then we cut to, it's like later that night, Sonia's going to bed, and she's wearing like the most sheer nightgown of all time.
Like, you would only wear this to have sex in, because literally basically it was just full frontal nudity with extra steps. Right?
Yeah, it's like you said, like it's not something that's going to be comfortable to sleep in if you're just a single lady by yourself, but it's an Italian movie from the 70s, so we needed this scene.
Yeah, more titillation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she goes to bed, and of course, also we see that Mosaic is secretly watching this through the window.
Just creeping out on her hard.
Yeah. And then we cut back to the morgue at the hospital, where Carl has somehow gotten in and is just, all the lights are off, and he's just walking around with a flashlight looking at corpses.
Right. By the way, did you catch... So first off, because once again, Italian movie in the 70s, the first person he reveals is just a naked lady.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice she was smiling?
I didn't catch that.
It's like she immediately broke character, and I'm like, ah. I guess, I don't know. Good for you.
So he looks at several bodies. One of them will end up, coming back. It matters that he saw.
But head.
Yeah, but at the time he's just like, he looks at like I think 3, maybe 4 bodies. Mm-hmm. Elsewhere we see Mosaic knocking Fritz out with an ether rag.
Right. Fritz is just sitting there doing his little crossword while somebody's coughing in the background. I don't think it's Mosaic. It doesn't sound like his rasp. And then Mosaic is of course like, hey, how does my ether rag smell?
Yeah. And so we see him dragging him away, and then we cut back to Carl, who's now searching through Frankenstein's desk. And we didn't mention.
Yeah, we
didn't mention that he like put his like main tape of notes in his desk drawer, but yeah, Carl finds it, takes it with him.
By the way, genius move. Let's just put these tapes in a regular desk drawer and not the one in the secret lab that no one knows about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we again cut to some comic relief. We've got the the chief outside of the hospital yelling at a bunch of cops, and he's like, listen, a male nurse is not a pack of cigarettes. You can't just lose him. Keep looking.
Right.
So he's still got cigarettes on the brain, obviously. And then Carl comes out and says, Fritz, this male nurse that's missing, he's the one who mentioned the formaldehyde thing to me. So it's interesting that he's gone missing now. I think that there may be a connection there.
Right. And then we do get a quick cut over to Frankenstein and Sonia eating. And I do love how Frankenstein just like nip, just a little snip off the food. It's like he's not even really thinking about it. He's just
yeah. Then Carl's like, we should go to Dr. Frankenstein's house. I think that's what's going on. But then when they get there, which again gets to the logistics stuff, Sonia answers and she says Frankenstein's gone, but he was just there, and they just walked from the hospital, which seems like it's close.
Right.
But either way, and in fact, so she's like, he's gone. They decide to wait in the lab.
Yeah, they find the secret lab at this point.
Frankenstein he's in the secret lab, right? Transfusing Fritz's blood into Mosaic. And they're in the main lab right outside, right? Because I think they find the lab after they listen to the tape.
Okay, yes. Okay, so they don't discover the lab at this point. You're right. This is where we cut to Frankenstein basically transfusing Fritz's blood into Mosaic.
Yeah. And I think that they are in the lab outside the door while, so they're like right next to each other and don't know it. And then he comes back to the house, and that's when like he gets questioned by questions about Fritz and, all these people missing and everything, and Schwartz, yeah. And again, is just like, I don't know anything. I don't know where Schwartz is. I don't know where Fritz is.
Don't be preposterous. And he just walks out of the room.
Yeah.
Like, dodge that one.
And I think he even says something about that, like, I've been in my lab the whole time. Like, I haven't messed with anything. And Carl's like, tells the police, like, I was in his lab earlier. I was searching it. He wasn't in there then. So wherever he was, it was somewhere else. So that again, something suspicious is going on, and it's involving Frankenstein in some way.
Right. Now, this is when Carl actually sits down and listens to the tapes by himself, and I'm like, oh no, he's by himself listening to tapes. Nothing good's going to come out of this one. But no, he's fine. But he basically was like, oh, he's in this secret lab doing some shit. Because we discover that, what is it, on, was it March 30th, that the first round of experiments was happening, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he hears, like, all that backstory stuff, so he knows Frankenstein's the one doing all of this. And then beyond that, he starts flipping through the police files while he's listening, and finds out that Schwartz apparently had a very prominent birthmark on his chest. And then he was like, wait a minute, that decapitated corpse I saw in the morgue earlier had a birthmark on its chest.
Yeah, and it looks like just like a cigarette burn or something like that. It's just a big reddish mark on the chest.
So he calls the police chief and is like, so I've got it all solved at this point. I know everything that's happened. I'll be over right away. Yeah,
that's when they all get together. Vincente finds the entrance to the secret lab as they're looking all over Frankenstein's regular lab. Then basically they start fanning out. And at this point, I believe we have Frankenstein and Sonia having a chat.
Yeah, and they hear a smash from another room, and she's like, what was that? And he's like, I don't know. So she's like, okay. So she goes to check.
Which, and then immediately nopes back around the corner, and she's followed by Mosaic.
Yep. And so, Frankenstein, like, for all his bad, he does care about Sonia, and he's like, all right, you go to your room, lock the door, I'll handle this, I'll protect you.
Yeah.
And so, she does, and, Frankenstein's like, I know you want Sonia, but, you can't have her. And they just get in a physical fight. And Frankenstein, this guy, he's built like Peter Cushing. He's a very scrawny Frankenstein, and he's fighting this very bulky monster.
Mosaic looks like he could take a couple punches.
Yeah. And, they're fighting, and then they kind of like separate, and Frankenstein's like, all right, well, you attacked me now, so I'm gonna have to destroy you. And it's like, how are you gonna do that, bud? Like,
Right.
So
Well, he's gonna
Mosaic
do that by
starts
running off.
Yeah, Mosaic chases him through the house all of a sudden, and
And he finds the Jason Voorhees special just chilling out on the counter. And he's like, all right, I know what to do with this.
yeah. And so I think at that point we cut back to the lab. We find out, the cops find Fritz dead as well in the secret lab.
So yeah, they find the Schwartz serum just hanging out in the secret lab. Then right beside it is a fridge. They open it up. Hey, there's Schwartz's head in the fridge. And then another guy opens the closet and the orderly's body just falls out. So it's like, this is very dark comedy at this point.
And suddenly, it's like, the funny thing is then suddenly Carl's like, oh no, Sonia, she might be in danger. And it's like, dude, why just now? Like, you knew all this stuff was going on.
Right. It's like, she's been in danger the whole time, my man.
Yeah. So he runs out to go rescue Sonia. Mm-hmm. So then we cut back to, Mosaic and Frankenstein fighting in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And Mosaic is starting to kind of like stumble a little bit, like he's running out of power. Yeah. And Frankenstein's like, I don't even have to kill you. Your brain is deteriorating. Like, it's the next thing. So apparently the body is continuing to reject stuff, and he's going to just have to keep swapping out parts forever. Right. But obviously the brain's a pretty important one. So
yeah, and obviously the actor for Mosaic, he's doing a really good job of emoting because he's literally like holding his head like he has a massive headache. Mm-hmm. So, and of course there's that weird like Vader-esque breathing thing that he decided to do. That was a choice. Like 5 years before actually
right.
Actual Star Wars.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was inspiration there. But anyway, as I mentioned earlier, he does find the machete and decides to go. We see him raise it, and then he walks off screen. Then we cut to Sonia running, and she runs into Carl's arms and immediately faints. Because that's what these old movies used to do.
And so then, the police all burst into the house and find that, Frankenstein has been murdered as well, and Mosaic is gone. Oh. So then we get, later, the police are listening to the tape with Carl and Sonia, and so they're like, okay, well, now we've got to find the monster.
Yeah, you know what else we get? Because this is, in fact, the 70s and an Italian movie. We just get a random striptease. Random striptease.
Yeah. There's a bit here where, I can't remember if it's before or after the striptease, but Carl basically, looks into the camera and spells out the themes of a Frankenstein movie. Because he's like, he's not really a monster. He's a man made up of pieces. He's an unfortunate soul. Right. And a cop looks at him and he's like, you're right. The real monster is Frankenstein.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I know. So this tongue is planted firmly in the cheek. So.
Yeah. But yeah, and so they realize, okay, they talk about, Mosaic has about 48 hours to live. The brain is going to break down at that point. So we've got to, regardless, he's gone by then, but we're going to try to catch him first, because we really don't want to wait 48 hours before we can smoke a cigarette.
Right, exactly. 48 more hours,
Yeah.
But yeah, so the striptease has ended. By the way, this is going to sound like a weird question, but she was already naked. Why did she have to remove her stockings? What did that accomplish? I'm just curious. I mean, maybe it does something for some people. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I guess for the leg men, it's something, but she sits. It's even she has to sit down to take them off. It's not an elaborate dance routine. It's a string. I mean, I guess maybe it's more like a burlesque style striptease. I don't know.
Maybe it's meant to be classy, Anthony, and we're not those type of guys. But anyway, yeah. So once she gets done, she pretty much just drapes herself in a shawl and walks off stage. So she's sitting there and she looks tired. Props to the actress, by the way, because she's like, I had to do that shit. She doesn't say that, obviously, as she's removing her fake eyelashes and removing her makeup. You get the air that she's tired of having to do this. So that's pretty interesting. But then we hear like a stampede or a cowboy show in the background.
Yeah, as she's walking off stage, like the MC says something about like the Wild West show or something. I don't know if it's a movie or a play or something, but
Part
yeah.
of the burlesque show that gets interesting.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden she's like, oh, there's something behind this curtain because there's a curtain and this is a horror movie.
Right. And it's Mosaic who pops out and he strangles her. And so he strangles her first and then gropes her in that order. Then we get like, for a while, we have all these little intercut scenes of the police driving around town in separate cars, talking over walkie-talkies, and they're sort of like triangulating different murders and trying to like narrow down where the monster is, basically.
Yeah, we basically get small vignettes of characters who go on to get murdered by Mosaic. Versus, I'm presuming a homeless person. But I could be wrong, and it could just be a junkyard worker. I don't know. They just had literally paper with a sandwich in it and a bottle of something, presumably alcohol.
Yeah, he's in a junkyard. Yeah, I had the same thing where I was like, I'm not sure if he's like homeless in some way or if he is just on his lunch break or whatever. It's not really clear. He's dirty, but he works in a junkyard, so that could be, also, work dirt or life dirt.
Props to him. He's probably the classiest looking homeless person / junkyard worker I've ever seen. He's got that cravat, the hat, and they all look pretty nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Good for you, buddy.
But yeah, he sits down to eat a sandwich, then he hears a dog barking, so he's like, well, I'm going to move just in case that dog comes to try to fuck with me.
A crashing and a cat howling as well. Like, no.
But nope, I guess the dog is barking because Mosaic's nearby, so moving doesn't help. He's attacked by Mosaic, and then he's beaten to death with some car part or something.
With his engine block. Like, Mosaic just picks up an engine block and he's like, well, I guess the guy's like, I'm dead anyway. So he doesn't really do anything. And Mosaic just drops it on him. And, well, that'll do it if you get an engine block dropped on you. So.
And then we also cut away to a racetrack, like car racing. And this scene is another one where like we follow a character in a weird way that makes them feel
more important.
Yeah. Like at first I was like, is that what he doesn't look like one of the cops, but maybe do I already know this guy?
Right. I literally said, is this the new main character? Like, because a lot of the other stories are just wrapped up, basically, right?
Yeah. But he ends up, he's there to like bet on the races or whatever, but like he ends up getting up, going to the bathroom, and then while he's there, Mosaic shows up and smashes his head into the wall.
Just leaves.
And, like we were saying, like, as all this is going on, the police are talking about all these murders. They're like, hey, we heard that a dancer at the, burlesque show died. She's here, and then we heard about this guy at the junkyard. So they're kind of triangulating, trying to figure out where Mosaic is.
Right. And then we get a quick cut to Carl just aggressively typing, like, the story. Like, Anthony, did you ever mess with the old school typewriters? Like,
oh yeah,
man, I had one, and I wrote most of like my childhood short stories, which are awful and destroyed now. But like, I remember when you turned that thing on, it sounded like you were starting up an airplane. It went right. And then like every click, tick 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 tick.
Yeah,
they were very aggressive.
And so he's talking to, or he calls Sonia, and he's like, I'm worried about your safety. Why don't you come to me? And it seems like he would be like, I'm going to come to you. Right. Stay where you're safe.
He's like, nah, this would inconvenience me. You get over here.
Yeah. And then she does show up, and they kind of watch the news together a little bit, talking about like, the police chase. And then our next little vignette is really strange because it's like there's a couple in a car parked at like a makeout spot.
Right, which, but they're clearly not in their teens.
They're like 40-ish at least. Like, and this is totally like the teen makeout spot. That like, And then Mosaic shows up again and is like prowling around.
Yeah, and like as they're about to, either they have done the deed or about to do the deed, he basically shows up, scares the lady. The guy hops out and he just bashes the guy's head against the roof of the car.
Yeah. He kills him pretty much right away, and then the girl jumps out of the car. She's topless because, of course, she is.
Italian movie. We've been over that.
Yeah, and so she goes running, and so then we get Mosaic chasing the running topless girl, and then the police get an alert like right away that there's been an attack at this secluded Lover's Lane location. I don't know who reported it.
Right. Maybe she got to a payphone or something. I don't know.
I guess.
Maybe she had money in her pocket. But she didn't have a shirt on.
No. So they get there, or the police do, and then Carl shows up, and the chief is like, we got it under control. You can head back. So he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go back to Sonia because I don't want her to be by herself. And it's like, why did you leave her in the first place then? Like, the cops are on it.
Well, you see, he left so that Mosaic would have a convenient way to get inside his vehicle. Because we then see whenever he parks and Carl goes out and gets in and goes into the house, Mosaic's hand just appears from under the hood, or the trunk of the car.
Yeah, and then he goes inside, or Carl does. And literally seconds later, Mosaic pops out from behind another curtain. There's just curtains everywhere for him to pop out from.
So he was like, hey, let's get a drink so, maybe we can calm down and, get freaky. And as he goes for the drink, I swear to God, I laughed for a solid 5 minutes at this. His hand just shoots out. And the look on their face, well, it's not just the look on her face, but the fact that Carl just kind of jumps in and gives Mosaic 3 good jabs to the face.
Right.
It's okay. Carl's a badass is what we're saying.
Yeah, and so Carl and Mosaic are fighting, and then the police get a report that someone called about a suspicious man at a nearby house. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, what's the address? And they give him the address, and he's like, wait, that's Carl's address. It's like the call's coming from inside the house kind of moment.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, everybody calling all cars, get to, go to Carl's house. And so then we cut back to Mosaic, actively strangling Carl at this point.
Yeah, it looks like Carl finally... Mosaic finally got the upper hand on Carl, who's been just decking him in the face. Far more effective than Frankenstein was.
Right. But then it's Mosaic's brain starts to fail worse, and he kind of lets up. And then he pretty much has a really, really long death scene, sort of just stumbling around the house in pain.
Right, and they add more blood to his face, as I guess his eyes and brain are being rejected by his body.
Yeah. And so then the cops finally arrive at the house as Carl and Sonia come strolling out, and they're just like, it's all over. You're too late. Mosaic just died on his own.
Right, and then fucking Schneider's like, well, I guess we wrapped that one up, boys. Lights a cigarette. What the fuck? He actually looks like he did something there at the end. It's you did nothing.
Yeah, and it's he literally he lights up, and then the credits roll, and he just sits there and smokes the whole cigarette as the credits are rolling over top of him. It's fantastic.
Yeah, great end. So abrupt ending, I guess we could say, more or less.
Yeah.
That was a movie.
Yeah, it's the death of Mosaic is super abrupt, and then we have a minute left in the movie. Mm-hmm. But at least we wrapped up the loose ends about the smoking.
Right.
We definitely needed to make sure that we knew that was taken care of.
Yeah, he got to enjoy that cigarette, damn it.
Yeah.
We got to watch him enjoy that cigarette. A wild movie, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, it's... this isn't one of the best things we've watched, but it's fun. It's fun. If you like Giallos, this is probably one you haven't seen because it's kind of on the fence.
Yeah, it's more a Giallo adjacent.
Yeah, it's it's right in the sweet spot between Frankenstein and Giallo. It's a little bit of both, but not quite completely either of them at the same time.
Yeah, the moodiness is absolutely there. The problem is we know who the killer is most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's no real mystery here.
yeah,
We get some good kind of bright red giallo gore, a lot of dumb nudity. So it's as long as you go into it knowing what you're getting into, there's some stuff to enjoy in there for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. So Anthony, where can they find us?
So yeah, you can find the social media thing. It's such a mess. We're recording a couple weeks in advance because of the holidays and everything. So who knows? By the time at this moment, I think Hive is back. So we're on Hive. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
We got a Reddit. We got a subreddit now.
We started a subreddit. We also started a Mastodon. All of these are the Frankencast. The Mastodon, its little second thing is .vmst.
Yeah.
That was the one I could get into. I don't really. Think of it as Victor's Monster VMST.
That's right.
That's not what it actually stands for. I have no idea what it actually stands for, but so we're there.
Yeah, and those
we're also
are underscore the Frankencast or the underscore Frankencast. Sorry.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. And then you can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. And you can find us on patreon.com/thefrankencast.
Absolutely.
And we're doing some new stuff there. I think we've kind of got at this point we've got I think 30 hours of stuff over on the Patreon. So there's plenty to check out, and we're always trying new things. And we'd love to hear if there's something you want us to try over there. So we definitely would love to have you in that space where we can kind of experiment a little more.
Absolutely. And we're more than happy to do weird stuff. We've been there and done that.
Yeah.
All right. You know what, Anthony? So we've just got into the 80s. I think maybe we can find our way through the 90s, but I think also maybe we could find ourselves something a little bit classier, maybe a little bit more French.
Yeah. Yeah, so next week it's Frankenstein 90, which I think came out in 84 or something.
Yep.
So we're still in the future of 1990.
Dun dun dun.
So yeah, join us next week for Frankenstein 90.
All right, once more into the Frankenwarp and to be continued.
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek.